This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Mithras Candle, as it so often is. Fall is here, and with the cool autumn air and darkening evenings comes a radiant tool for creating the perfect sacred setting or cozy moment. Of course, I'm talking about my obsession, Mithras candles. These pure beeswax lights are inspired by the contemporary science of photobiology, along with the ancient pagan practices and cosmic mysteries. Mithras candles are handmade by my mythic and scientific pals in Philadelphia, and they come in traditional golden yellow and sensual black hues, with other colors and collaborations popping up seasonally. You will be hooked like I am once you experience the gorgeous Byzantine hand-dripped style of a Mithras candle and their honeyed floral aroma. These candles are made with soul to carry your intentions to where they are needed. Go to mithrascandle.com to pick up the perfect glowing addition to your magical moments. Witch Wave listeners get 24% off their first order by using offer code WITCH at checkout. That's offer code WITCH at M as in magic, ITHRAS candle.com. They truly, truly, truly are the best. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more witch wave and more magic in their lives overall, and I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witch Wave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witch Wave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witch Wave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witch Wave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello, and welcome to the Witch Wave. Well. It has been quite a couple weeks, and I'm still processing the results of the election. Suffice it to say, it did not go the way I hoped. And if you feel anything like I've been feeling, I hope that you have been taking really good care of yourself and your loved ones right now, and that you'll continue to do so in the weeks and months and years to come, and I will be right there with you. To that end, I felt called to offer an online workshop this week, And it will actually be tonight if you are listening to this episode on the day it drops, which is Wednesday, November 20th, though it will be recorded for viewing up to 30 days after if you can't make it live. And the workshop is all about working with the goddess Hecate. This is the Greek goddess of witchcraft and magic, and we're going to go over many of her various guises and powers and symbols and stories. But there is going to be a particular emphasis on her guise as Hecate Phosphoros, otherwise known as Hecate the Light Bearer or the Light Bringer, because remember, she is not a goddess of darkness, as many people think she is. Hecate is a torchbearer. She uses the light of her flame to guide us in and out of the underworld, in and out of the darkness. And I've been working with her for a very long time, and she's certainly come up in many workshops of mine before, but it is clear to me that she is particularly supportive for us in this moment, in any moment when it feels like we are about to take a collective journey into shadow, whether that's as an individual, as a nation, as a world. And even though I've been grappling with my own anxiety and heartbreak about what occurred and what's to come, I also still have tenacious hope and the conviction that as witches, we are uniquely equipped to rise to this moment, to share our skills and our gifts and our resources, to protect one another, and to shine light for each other. And Hecate can remind us how. So do join me. You can register over at Instagram at the link in my Phantasmophile bio or via my website, pamgrossman.com/events. And I'm looking forward to helping share Hecate's magic and her blazing torchlight with you all. The other things that have been really getting me through these last few weeks have been, first of all, leaning on my relationships and also leaning deeply into making and ingesting art. 2 days after the election, it just so happened I had a photo shoot planned, and I'm so glad I didn't cancel it even though I was tempted to. Because dressing up and being in a beautiful place, making beautiful pictures with my fantastic, talented friends was such a balm for my soul, and it seemed to uplift their spirits too. And through the wonders of makeup and excellent lighting, you cannot tell that I was crying for like 48 hours straight beforehand. And so I'm excited to share some of those snaps with you all down the road. But the results of it are kind of beside the point. It was plugging into that current of creativity and magic and connecting to that spirit in others that felt so life-affirming and joyful. I also finished reading a wonderful book, which is Alan Moore's new fantasy novel called The Great When, which takes place in London in 1949 and has all kinds of real-life occult characters in it, including a fictionalized Austin Osman Spare. So check it out if you need something escapist and magical. And I saw one of my very favorite films on the big screen this past week, and that's the film The Color of Pomegranates. Now, this is just one of the most gorgeous, poetic phantasmagorias you can imagine, and I'm told it's actually streaming on Criterion again too right now, so do watch it if you just want to bathe in something meditative and beautiful and just like utterly, utterly opulent. It is so delicious. But I had never seen it in the theater before, so that was just such a treat. Thank you, Lara Antal. And I've been listening to a ton of music, just making playlists, and instead of listening to all the podcasts that I often listen to during the day, I've just been indulging in lots and lots of my favorite albums and songs, and it has brought me so much comfort and support, and I'm beyond grateful that no matter what happens in this world, we always have music. And one of the musicians whose work I keep turning back to is today's guest, the enchanting double bassist and singer and otherworldly visual artist, Damsel Elysium. And I'm so thrilled that I got to unexpectedly meet them in person when I was in the UK last month, and I'm doubly thrilled that they agreed to talk with me all about their music and their magic. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches.
Emily writes, I have been a longtime listener and admirer since your early Phantasmophile days when a proclivity toward certain surreal artists led me to you. I love your eye for art and your soothing instruction and interviews. I practice witchcraft, but not as often or as in-depth as I would like with monetary and time constraints. Recently, I have decided to take charge over a development of about the past 10 years and see if you have some advice. I have fairly bad luck. I decided to write this after house sitting at my sister's, where the hot water heater has gone out, which she has never had problems with. There are much larger instances of things going awry that I had no control over, but also weekly visits by the inconvenience fairies. I do not want to mention a lot about the larger tasks, but for example, in smaller instances, I will buy a car and it will be a lemon, even though there is no preface to it being a bad car. My familiar cat of 9 years disappeared suddenly and with a lot of trauma to my family. Paperwork gets lost. People do not call me back. Situations that seem like sure things just flounder and stall. I work really hard at a project that just falls flat or goes nowhere, over and over again. I consider myself a fairly upbeat, balanced person who is able to regulate disappointment and understand how unimportant and trivial some problems are when I am so lucky in love and station and possibilities, and the world is such a grand, beautiful place, but also terrifying and cruel to a lot of undeserving people. But my constant barrage of small disappointments can be very, very wearing. My husband, who says that my intuition can get to the point of being supernatural, will often mention how I have such bad luck or disappointment that it seems eerie and purposeful. Could I have been hexed by a former friend or lover? Do you have any recommendations for goddesses or spells of protection that I could use to reverse bad fortune? I have tried a few things with no luck. Am I not revering enough? I veer toward Hestia and lately Demeter, being more of a home witch myself, and I find comfort in playful Pan and Hermes. Hi, Emily. I love that you're an OG Phantasmophile fan. I still have such fondness for that blog and all of the magical folks it connected me with, and I'm so glad that you're one of them. Now, on to the matter at hand. I am so sorry you've been experiencing so many setbacks and frustrations, and I can see how that can make you feel like maybe there's some nefarious doings at work. Could you have been hexed? I mean, I can't say no. Anything is possible, certainly. Or it could be a case of, life. Shit happens, and it sucks. Everything you described sucks. Especially losing your cat. That one really hit me in the feels. And so the question is, what can you do about this from a magical perspective? Well, witchcraft certainly offers a lot of options in this regard. At the most basic level, you can try doing what's called an uncrossing spell, just to cover all your bases. This is a spell for when you think perhaps you have been hexed, or just when you feel out of sorts or out of alignment and are looking for your energy to flow more smoothly and your luck to shift. One of the simplest methods of doing an uncrossing spell is to use some uncrossing incense or uncrossing oil or an uncrossing candle, and you can find these at most witch shops. I myself have been using the uncrossing incense from Enchantments here in New York City for decades now. And they also have a love uncrossing incense, which is useful for if you are quarreling a lot or just feeling unaligned with your partner or partners. But I really like this incense because, as with most smoke spells, you can really sense a palpable shift in the energy of your space and yourself when you burn it. And you can apply this smoke or those oils to other objects or places that feel as if the energy is just kind of blah. That's the technical term. So, no, it's not going to fix your car if you burn it in your car. You still have to get your car repaired, I'm afraid. But it can help potentially shift the energy of your car if it is still feeling like a place of stress or bad luck. So that's just one example. I also really like cleansing spells like house washes and salt baths, floor washes, that kind of thing. Basically, we're trying to spiritually rinse you and get you back to a clear baseline. This isn't necessarily preventative. It's more about helping you release any sort of negativity that feels like it's clinging to you or blocking you. And I find that organizing my space and decluttering is a very powerful spell in this regard too. Just anything that helps energy flow more smoothly and make you feel more at peace. Now, I, for one, don't believe that you're not revering enough, as you put it, because I don't believe in having punitive or even harshly transactional relationships with deities or with people for that matter. However, I do believe that giving them a little extra love and then petitioning them for help can also be very useful here, whether that's with the deities you mentioned or, as you've heard, with Hecate, who I have been really deepening my relationship to lately. I just think she can be an excellent guide through dark times and moments of transition and uncertainty, so you may want to consider learning more about her and working with her more closely. And Hecate can also help you find the light in dark times or dark circumstances. It sounds like you have a gratitude practice to some extent already, and I'm not trying to be Pollyanna here, but really letting yourself focus on and feel the positive things in your life in a considered way can be game-changing when it comes to shifting your own luck. This doesn't mean you aren't allowed to lament your losses and air your grievances. I'm a big fan of venting when people need to and complaining to some degree and feeling the pain of that. I think that is healthy and necessary, and I don't believe in repressing those shadowy feelings at all. But I do think that if you can also follow Hecate's torchlight and cultivate a practice of giving equal focus or greater focus to the blessings in your life, more will come your way. That is my experience, and I hope that it becomes yours too. Thank you so much for writing. Thank you so much for being interested in my work for such a long time. And I'm wishing you the very best of luck. Now, on to my guest. Damsel Elysium is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and experimental sound and visual artist who uses double bass, violin, and original recorded sounds to explore alternative communication and connections with space, nature, and the unseen world. Their performances combine improvisational music making, ritual, costume, and fantastical world building, giving their audience a sensation of being transported to another realm while staying rooted wholly in their bodies. Damsel's EPs include 2024's Whispers from Ancient Vessels and Whispers and Speakings, as well as the score to the short horror film Glint. Their LP, Soft Falling, will be out in 2025, and they are currently developing it in part via a multimedia exhibition at London's Stage Gallery, which is up now through November 27th. In addition to that, Damsel has collaborated with and performed for FKA Twigs and the Victoria and Albert Museum, and they've created work for Tate Collective. They've created glass instruments for IITTALA. They've been commissioned by fashion brands such as Gucci and Simone Rocha, and they've composed for films which have been entered in the Sundance Film Festival. And just a quick note, as you'll gather, this conversation was recorded on Election Day before we got the results. Damsel joined me remotely from their home in a seaside town outside of London. Damsel Elysium, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Damsel. Nice to meet everyone.
It is so nice to get to speak with you. And I feel like this is a very wonderful example of stars aligning because I had been a fan of your music and your various art workings for a long time. And then lo and behold, I find myself at this magical event in London at the House of Hackney headquarters, and I spied you down this candlelit table, and I was like, I cannot believe that they are here. So I was so excited to meet you then, and I'm so excited to get to talk to you in more depth.
Yeah, that was quite spooky, wasn't it? And it was like my first time interacting with real witches in a space. So I was like, oh my gosh, yay, I feel so seen. Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Well, you know what? Since you brought the word witch into the chat this early, I would love to talk to you about your relationship to that word, especially as an artist. You know, in my intro, I've already described the fact that you are a musician, a sound artist, but you're also a visual artist. I also see you as somebody who has a deeply, I would say, mystical relationship to your creative practice. So what is your relationship to words like witch and magic?
Well, I'd say I am a witch.
Yes.
I actually grew up as a really devout Christian up until like my early teens, and then I just had like a huge 180 and I discovered paganism and then Wicca and witchcraft, and that was kind of my gateway into it. And also my parents are very spiritual, so I've kind of always had a very pure experience of everything, even atheism for a bit and going into science, and then now I'm kind of coming back into my spiritual side. I think my work has helped me rediscover that side of me, that mystical side, that kind of alchemist side, that kind of like connecting to nature, connecting to spirit, connecting to self. I think I use, without realizing, divination in my shows, in my performances. That's kind of how I use those spaces to communicate with the higher self, rather than it being like, oh, I'm putting on a show, like let's listen to some music and dance. It's more like a ritual for me. So yeah, no, I'm very comfortable with that word. And I don't think I always was comfortable with it, but it's definitely something I've grown into.
Beautiful. I suspected as much, but I'm so glad that you are taking ownership over that language. That makes me really, really happy. And talking about your live performance, I have not yet had the pleasure of seeing you live, though I've watched many, many videos of you performing. And I've noticed that you sometimes will cast a circle or an arc on the stage with
Mm.
flowers or kind of like a protective spiral. And I wondered if that practice has enhanced your magic, has made you feel, I don't know, more protected. When did you start doing that, and how do you benefit from it?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's actually a fairly recent thing.
Mm.
So when I said earlier about like I am discovering through my work my kind of spirituality or my kind of practices, it's basically by trial and error, seeing what works. Performance for me, as I said, it's ritual, it's really, really hard work. Like I find it physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally so draining
Mm.
that I have to kind of put things in place that protect my energy, but also enhance the energy. So what I'm giving to people is important because like I think a lot of my kind of sound work especially is very much about trance and accessing something that you don't get to access all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I've actually just been experimenting with protective elements in performance very recently. So the casting a circle with flowers, that came quite recently, like a few months ago or earlier this year, where I was told by this amazing sound artist called Layla Rufus, who is also a practicing Sufi.
Mm.
And she was telling me how wearing specific colors can be protective or enhance certain things. Because I was like so drained. I'll do a performance, I'll get home, and for a week, I will just need to sleep. I feel
Mm.
so drained. I feel depressed. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And I realizing that being with an audience, giving so much, they're taking energy. It's a consensual practice because, like, I want to be there. I want to give that energy to people. But how do I replenish myself?
Mhm.
And she was talking about in her village, people wear the color white during performance or during ritual as a way to, like, kind of reflect or deflect certain energy. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So I tested it out. So I
Yes.
wore this white dress and I had cast this circle of flowers. Oh, it was a semicircle, so it was just so that like it would separate me in the audience. And it's not a way of me like cutting out the audience, it's actually a way for me to tether myself. That's
Mm.
what I found.
Mm.
And yeah, after the show, I had kind of got to that trance state. And then usually when the show is over, I feel so exposed. I feel like I've just gone up and stripped naked because I'm just like,
Yeah.
I feel so energetically exposed. And I didn't feel that at all. And at the end of the performance, I told everyone to take a flower with them to break the circle. And for the first time in my life doing performing, I had felt like I could come back down to earth, like I could
Oh,
ground myself again. And I was like, okay, that's proof enough that like what I'm doing, it's more than just singing or playing my double bass. It's actual ritual for me.
yes. Oh, I love this.
It was like a pivotal thing, like, oh my God, it makes sense. Like the wearing the white protected me from oversharing energy. It was like a little bit of protection that I could like keep myself intact. And then the flowers was like a way to tether myself with everyone. And everyone taking a piece was closing that. And I was able to like ground myself after because honestly, after every performance, I literally people like, oh hey, you did so great. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
I'm just like stuck in it. And it's really horrible because I can't get back down.
Mm.
After that, that's been my like gateway into, oh, okay, so I need to develop this more. Like, what can I kind of get into, you know?
Ooh, I'm so excited to see how you develop this and the other kind of, I don't know, technologies and rituals and processes that you're going to be
Mm,
working with down the road. But I'm thrilled to hear that this ritual is so helpful for you because I believe that at its best, anyway, art is an offering and it is
mm,
this spiritual exchange. But when you enter a liminal space, having a container for it or a vessel, to use a word that I know you're very fond of,
mm,
is so important. And people have been doing that for thousands of years. So why
yeah.
not you as an art witch, if you will?
Mm. I love that art witch, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been like even more interested now in incorporating more of these things. So I'm starting to like use a torch and a mirror in my performances. So like utilizing light and reflection for like these kind of divination kind of things.
Yeah.
But I'm still at the same time trying to discover what that actually is and means to me as an artist, which
When you say torch, are you using the word like we would say flashlight?
yes.
Okay, so not a literal blazing fire
Okay,
on a
yes.
stick, because that would be rad too.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, flashlight, yeah.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. But even just the symbolism of the light and the mirror, like they have such deep mythological and archetypal resonances. Actually, just last night, I was leading this workshop and we were talking about Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft, and how there's a lot of similarities between her and actually the Statue of Liberty. They both hold torches, and sometimes Hecate's shown with this spiky crown. And so, as I told you off mic, we're recording this on Election Day. And so, trying to work with Hecate in her guise as Hecate Phosphoros or Hecate the Light Bringer and sort of map her onto the Statue of Liberty in America and all the kind of light I'm hoping will blaze forth for this election, you know, it has been very top of mind. How are you thinking about the torch and the mirror right now?
So for me, the mirror is basically, like I said, my work is me discovering more about my practice. And for me, the mirror, I learned this from an artist who is like a traditional painter, was taught in Florence, Italy, really just beautiful portraiture. And there's this technique where you place the mirror in front of your eye and you look at your subject through the mirror. And she basically told me that this is a way to make sure that you're seeing truthfully, so that like you're seeing distance in the right way, that you're not like focusing on something on someone's face and overdoing it. So like the mirror is a way to reset and see the truth. And when she said see the truth, like it really struck a chord with me. I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And I started to do this in performance where I would look through the mirror and I see it as like revealing the spirit of the audience.
Ooh.
For me, it's like seeing the truth, seeing the people, their true selves, not the like kind of wall that they put up. Like a lot of audience members, I don't know if this is just the British thing. A lot of audience members don't like interaction. And something that's very, very vital for my work to work is participation.
Yes.
So by doing this mirror thing, for me, it's like saying, I see you, I see you. In order to experience the truth of this, you have to bring yourself forward as well. So I open like that. There's all these things about light for me because I'm a huge physics nerd as well. Like I must say, like, if it wasn't for my creative side, I definitely would have studied the stars. The mirror is that for me. The torch is similar. So what I do is at a certain point in my set, I shine a torch at the audience and I like go around. I slowly reveal everyone's faces. And for me, some of that is about disruption. So obviously having a light shone in your eyes is not pleasant. I get that. But there's something about spotlighting and spotlighting the audience. So it's a very performance-driven thing, but it's also for me like another way of revealing people. And it's very scary, like seeing the faces of who's watching you. Because like, usually they're in the dark and you're performing to yourself. But for me, it's very important. I see and interact with the people who are present with me. I want people to be present with me.
Sure.
I always say that in the performance, this is a collaboration. This is us together making this performance, making this energy, making this moment. And it really does show like who's in it and who isn't. Especially country-wise as well. Like depending who I'm performing to, how much people want to interact or not.
That's so interesting from like an anthropological standpoint. And I love this idea that you're inviting this exchange of energy. Perhaps you're even insisting upon it, depending on your mood in a given performance. And I can understand you wanting to resist just being like a dancing clown or something for people to just gape at, that you want to have this real exchange or this real connection with your audience. I think that's really important and really understandable.
Yeah, and I'm not always open as well. Like it's also a way for me to go, okay, people are here for me let me be with you as well. Because like as soon as you start looking people in the eye, I'm like, oh God, oh no. Like, especially like on a show day where I feel very tired and vulnerable and I don't have the energy to give, it kind of encourages me to go, okay, like I've got to be present now. I've got to look in, kind of like be focused with people.
Yes, yes.
It's like, yeah, we're going to travel together. We're going on a journey together. It's like asking permission as well, in a way. Yeah.
Beautiful. On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is the time of year when we stop and say thank you. I am so grateful, first of all, to all of you for listening to The Witch Wave. And someone else I'm so grateful for is my therapist. I truly could not do all the things that I do to try to achieve all the dreams that I've been trying to achieve without my therapist. So thank you, thank you, thank you to her. This month is all about gratitude, and I am often saying that we should have an attitude of gratitude. It is some of the most powerful magic that we can make, to stop and give thanks to the many blessings that we have, to the people that we love, to the opportunities we've been given, the support that we're lucky enough to enjoy. And along with my therapist, who I just shouted out, there's another person that we don't get to thank enough: ourselves. So thank you, Pammy G. It is sometimes so hard to remind ourselves that we're all trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, it isn't easy. So here is, first of all, a reminder that when you are sitting down to give thanks for food and shelter and hopefully health and love, also send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. When I started doing a more active practice of gratitude, more blessings felt like they were coming my way. It just helps shift your lens to a more positive, grateful, open-hearted way of being. And one of the things I genuinely do when I'm in therapy is not only complain and give a litany of things that are bothering me. Believe me, I do plenty of that. But I also list things that I've done well, things that I'm proud of, accomplishments that I've achieved, blessings and synchronicities and magical boons that I've received. And it has really helped me become a much more potent and powerful and happy human being. It feels so good to have a space where I can give thanks and feel thankful for a lot of the things that I've learned and a lot of the ways in which I've grown. And so I cannot recommend therapy more for everybody. And so if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you have to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/witchwave today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, spelled HELP.com/witchwave. Step into the gentle embrace of the 100-acre wood this winter with Rue and Vervaine's magical tarot deck, the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. This charming deck makes the perfect gift for anyone who cherishes Winnie the Pooh and the timeless tales of friendship and adventure. Discover the splendor of the Christopher Robin box set, where every element is meticulously crafted to rekindle the joys of childhood with Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, Piglet, and all their friends. This exclusive collection features the beautifully illustrated full-size tarot deck and a mini version, along with a tarot cloth, bag, and a gorgeous keepsake box that captures the enduring wisdom of Pooh. Enhance your journey with the stunning guidebook, a deep dive into the wisdom of Pooh Tarot, which is available separately. This beautifully crafted guidebook offers rich insights and reflections to deepen your connection with each card's message. And don't miss Rue and Vervain's delightful array of winter Pooh and Tigger Tarot merchandise. From playful apparel to charming accessories, each item is designed to warm hearts with the simple joys of Pooh's world. Give the magic of connection and nostalgia this holiday season with the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot, the Christopher Robin box set, and the enchanting guidebook. Ideal for both seasoned tarot readers and those who hold Pooh dear. These treasures offer insight and enchantment. Visit Rue and Vervain to capture these heartfelt holiday wonders. That's rueandvervain.com, rueandvervain.com. After all, the most precious gifts are those that sprinkle a little enchantment into our lives. Hi, Witch Wavers. I have exciting news. At long last, we have some new Witch Wave merch available for you now through TeePublic. We decided to go with TeePublic for our new Witch Wave merch because it is a print-on-demand site, which means you can get different variations of the Witch Wave logo printed on t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks. Oh my gods, the sky's the limit. And the shirts come in different styles and fabrics and colors and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most magical in. So head on over to witchwavepodcast.com/shop.
Speak with truth. You are worthy and full of youth. Green, unscreen. Speak green and speak with truth. You are worthy and full of youth. Take some unsweet what you know and speak with truth. You are worthy and full of youth.
Welcome back to the Witch Wave. Today I'm speaking with Damsel Elysium. So, Damsel, I am using your stage name, your magical name, whatever the phrase is that you use when you refer to how I just addressed you. And I came across a quote from you in Twist magazine. You said, "I always say that Damsel is not my alter ego. It's just a name that I've given to describe the world, to describe my perspective." And then you go on to say, "I don't see Damsel as a person. It's kind of a vessel to hold Geneva's ideas." You being Geneva, of course. Dressing as Damsel is kind of cosplaying. I love this whole notion. Can you unpack some of that a little bit more? What does Damsel Elysium mean to you? How did you come to this name? And how do you work with this configuration of ideas?
Yeah, well, this is so funny because, the reason I chose Damsel Elysium was, when I was 15 and I had, a fan fiction account that I wanted to rename. So it's just come from that. But the reason that I chose Damsel is because it was kind of around a similar time of wanting to connect with this spiritual side or this kind of witch side, basically. As I was growing up and learning Wicca and things, learn about the kind of magical name that you give yourself.
Yes.
And this wasn't meant to be a magical name, but now I think about it in hindsight, it kind of was. So Damsel Elysium, the reason I chose it was because it means maiden of paradise. And the more that I reflect on that, instead of it being some kind of ethereal, a damsel in a mystical way, mystical garden, damsel to me, or maiden, was a stage of being, a stage of life. I'm really young still and I'm figuring things out. You know, I'm in that kind of like maiden era. That's kind of how I saw it. And I don't see maiden as a young woman, but more as this kind of stage of life, this kind of part of the cycle. And then Elysium being like, okay, this is the world that I'm building and exploring, and I'm learning at the same time as being in it. And I do expect the name to change.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't expect to be Damsel forever because I'm
yeah.
not going to be a maiden forever. I'm going to enter, you know, if we're thinking about triple moon goddess cycles and mother cycle, and even though like I'm non-binary, but I still do see those stages of life as kind of ways of existing, new stages of life. We all change and grow and morph, and there's different names for that. And going back to that article, I said that is how I see the world. And that's so interesting because I now have a new name for that. It's called God Gita.
Oh.
And it's eventually going to be an album, like a multifaceted art project. But I'm planting the seed now. The name is God Gita. So it's grown into a different name already. Like maybe this is motherhood name. I don't know yet.
Wow.
But
Can you tell me a little more about that name and how you came to it?
yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty random. So I think when I think of names or these things, I don't come with it fully fleshed. It just kind of came to me and then I discover it as I go. And that's what God Gita is about, discovering who this is or what this is as I go along.
Is that a word that is derived from something, or is it a word that you made up? I've just never heard it before myself.
It's a word I made up, but it stems from Godifu, which is Lady Godiva's name. So it's not about Lady Godiva, just like disclaimer, full disclaimer. It's just I loved the sound it had in my mouth.
Yes.
And then I kept saying Godifu, 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 and then it like slowly changed to God Gita.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited. So you're morphing.
Yeah. And like I see God Gita as something that it's a world in itself, but it's not a person, it's not God. But at the same time, it is everything. It's all those things and nothing, which is like, it kind of gets me into a bit of an existential hole. But it's also this like amazing art project that means I get to work with so many amazing people and collaborate with and just basically like world build. Like that's my favorite thing to do is world building.
Yes.
Whether it's kind of rooted in reality or into like this kind of fantasy world, to me they are one and the same.
Yes.
Damsel is that younger self coming into being. And yeah, I expect it to change to whatever name comes at the right time, you know?
Yes. Oh, that's so, so gorgeous. So we've been referring to your music, but we haven't actually talked directly about it yet, which I think is actually appropriate given the kind of music you make. I think of it as extremely ethereal and it reverberates. It's very vibrational and atmospheric. You already mentioned your primary instrument is the double bass, and I know sometimes you play violin. I believe I've seen and heard you sing as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I actually grew up playing the violin first. I was classically trained up until I was about 15. Hated it because it was just very traumatic. I mean, I chose to do violin. I wanted to be a solo violinist, but that just clearly wasn't my path.
Right.
At least classically. It was a very kind of like traumatic experience, full of elitism, full of racism, but
Sure.
we won't get into that.
You're welcome to. I'm happy to if you want to.
I've talked about it so many times.
Yeah.
It did fuel my practice. So I then went into filmmaking and photography. That was my practice for a while. Then during the first lockdown, I got back into music. And then I just got a double bass. I was like obsessed with it. The first time I heard like a bowed double bass, I was like, this is insane. And I played one once. I was like, I got to get one immediately. So it was a bit of a lockdown project. And it was the first time I was interacting with an instrument that I wasn't guided in. So it was all self-teaching myself.
Wow.
It was such a visceral experience where I was really interacting with it like a kind of person, getting to know someone and experiencing all these different ways of playing. It's very percussive, and as you use the word, very vibrational. The way it shakes on the body, it makes me alive. So it did become the instrument that I'm kind of more known for.
Yeah.
Violin is actually my first instrument.
Yes.
More recently, I've been trying to explore piano and vocals more and trying clarinet.
Oh,
I try every instrument. I'm a sucker for thinking that I can do anything.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so I think I'm a bit naive like that. I just like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. I'm sure I can do it. And then being like, oh, okay, it's harder
Mhm.
than I thought, but I have fun with it. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I have a soft
Yeah.
spot for clarinet because my father's a musician and his primary
Oh,
instrument is the clarinet. And so it just, of course, always makes me think of him. But I can understand how, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine that if you know violin, then translating that into playing double bass, I imagine obviously your body is held much differently.
mm,
But am I correct? It's the same in terms of fingering and the notes?
mm,
Because I was just
yeah.
assuming that going from violin to double bass is an easier transition than a stringed instrument to a woodwind instrument, but maybe I'm wrong
For
about that.
sure. I think that it's a mixture
Mm.
because when I was getting back into music again, I was trying to really get rid of or work with the trauma that I'd suffered while learning the violin. And I
Mhm.
had the very honorable experience of working with another Black string musician called Sarah Durrami Williams.
Mm.
And she had gone through the same thing as me,
Mhm.
but her practice and her lessons were around therapy and somatic practice. And this informed everything. So, like the fact that basically I injured myself playing the violin chronically. So, it's a permanent injury.
Mm.
And that was through the buildup of anxiety and tension.
Yeah.
And she taught me how to relieve that through just the way that you interact with the instrument as a body rather than, oh, I have to play the right notes and all these things. It talks about breath, it talks about how you hold your body, how you interact with the instrument, etc., and how you interact with it emotionally. That's like the key thing.
Mm.
It's one of the reasons I do what I do. So she worked a lot with my anger as an energy supply, and it was life-changing.
Mm.
So carrying those lessons into new instruments, that's my approach. So I agree that like violin to double bass is actually, for me anyway, is a better transition than violin into cello,
Mhm.
even though they're both like relatively closer
Okay.
in sound, but
Mhm.
the notes of the string on the cello is different to the violin, but on the double bass, it's the same as violin, but inverted.
Oh, I had no idea. This is so interesting.
Yeah, so that was helpful, but it's a whole different way of holding. And the strings are so thick. My
Mm.
hands are so small. And like, there's a lot that is different, but there is a lot that is similar, like how you kind of get a note out of a string.
Yeah.
But because of that approach that I had learning the violin again, like relearning,
Mhm.
unlearning actually, I had to unlearn a lot of colonial patterns that comes up in classical. But when I had those kind of principles that she'd given me, I can apply that to pretty much everything I do in my life. The
Mhm.
way I walk, the way I eat, the way I sleep, everything. And also the way that I pick up a new instrument. So I always kind of approach instruments with this kind of getting to know it as almost like a being rather than like an object?
This is so, so inspiring to me. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, okay, let me back up a little bit. When I think about a more enchanted relationship to the world,
Mhm.
it is often one that is based on, first of all, an exchange. It's being in relationship with something as opposed to owning something or having control over it. And for me as a witch, it's also about trusting my intuition, trusting my feelings. I often say witchcraft is an embodied practice. Like, yes, it's
Yeah.
spiritual, but it's also about how we feel and experience the world
Yeah.
in our vessels, right?
Mm, mm.
Is this resonating with you in terms of how your relationship has changed to music and to your instrument? Does it feel more intuitive in that way?
Absolutely, yeah. I work almost entirely with improvisation. That's my kind of go-to because it's about how I feel, you
I
know?
had no idea. So, when
Yeah.
I'm listening to your albums, and you have
Mm.
several EPs out right now, I love them all, and we'll
Oh,
talk
thank you.
about them a little more specifically in a moment. But when I'm listening to them, are you telling me that I'm listening to music that's been improvised on the day that it's being recorded?
Absolutely, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I like physically can't do something that is like pre-prepared.
Mm,
I think that was always my struggle with learning classical music. I would want to go off on like basically in the kind of British way of learning music, there's this thing called the ABRSM, and you basically learn 3 songs and then you have to do oral exam, which is like where you sing, and then sight reading. And oral and sight reading was always where I failed because
mhm.
you had to play and read something you've never seen before. And what I would do is I would play, then start to want to change it, you know? So I'd be playing the wrong notes because I'm like, oh, it's going to go here. And like, so I
Yeah.
was like improvising as a kid without realizing.
How interesting. And so, just to kind of zoom in a little bit more on this
Mm.
idea. So, the songs that I hear on your EP, or on your EPs, I should say, do you perform those same songs live now that you have recorded them? Or once it's recorded, is that the last time you'll ever play those songs again? And every time someone sees you live, it's different?
So it's a little difficult because it's improvised to replicate exactly what you hear. So I usually have backing tracks that kind of put down a structure for me. And
Hmm.
then usually in a show, I will improvise off of that. So I'm kind of interacting with the past self and then
Ah.
kind of bringing out a new version.
So there's like a sonic skeleton or
Yeah,
scaffolding, but then you're bringing new, I don't know, flesh to it every
exactly.
time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
No show is the same. Like, I play different things all the time, even with that skeleton, like, they're completely different. I did a show in Berlin just a week ago, and it was a 2-night show, but I was playing the same set, so I had the same skeleton down, but each one was so completely different, not just because I felt differently on each day, but because of who was there. So
Mhm.
again, another thing about audience participation and how the audience feel completely change how that set goes. And I like it like that. I've tried to do sets the same and I get bored easily
Yeah.
and I don't connect in the same way. It becomes something else.
How magnificent. So let's talk a little bit about your EPs. The ones I'm familiar with are Whispers from Ancient Vessels, which is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And then you call it a rework, not a remix album,
Mhm.
where it's called Whispers and Speakings, where you've taken, again, we'll call them skeletons, these sonic skeletons of the prior EP, and then you have other guest artists come and kind of reinterpret them. Is that right?
Yeah, so Whispers from Ancient Vessels wasn't actually meant to come out last year, but it got pushed to this year.
Hmm.
And that was the first project that I did. It's kind of like when I was beginning music again. And a lot of that EP is about me interacting with the double bass for the first time. So one of the tracks, Shoreline, a lot of those sounds is me discovering the bass for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, and then kind of like electronic processing happens with that. But this EP was about connecting with nature,
Hmm.
connecting with trees, having conversations with trees. It was me kind of reawakening that side of me that, like, you know, what you call embodied side,
Hmm.
and also interacting with the world in this very kind of holistic and grounded way. Yeah, that EP was kind of my beginning back, you know?
It's so beautiful. And I love the way you also connect up the idea of trees as vessels, but also the double bass as a vessel, because that's made of
Mm,
wood, right? So I
yeah.
imagine there's some kind of tree spirits or ghosts of the trees still in your instrument.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they are alive. All instruments are so different from each other. Like, I can't play the same instrument all the time. It gets tricky for touring in other countries because I can't travel with the double bass. So
Mm.
I have to get them to provide me with one. So I'm playing a different double bass every time. And
Wow.
during sound check, I'm literally like, okay, who are you? Like, getting to know this new instrument. And honestly, like, a double bass changes the set every single time. Like some are really powerful and really vocal and interact with you, and others are very quiet and new, and they're like really excited to just hear what you do. And some are really like stubborn, like they don't want you to do what you want to do. You have to kind of adapt to the bass. They're full of personality, not just because they're made differently, but I do believe they have spirits in them, because I think anything that anyone makes with care, any kind of object or whatever, holds spirit, and depending how many people play it and who plays it, you leave energy behind, So that definitely has an effect on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that really resonates with me. No pun intended. That's just really, really gorgeous. And then you just released the soundtrack to a short horror film. This is called Glint, or I should call it a score, not a soundtrack, if we're being accurate. Can you share a little bit about this project too?
Yeah, so one of my friends, Saina Faradagi, is a filmmaker, and we've known each other for a little while now. And she'd asked me to be part of this coming of age horror film. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen right now, because all the time everyone says my work is really scary. And I'm like, no, it's not. But if it's going to exist in any place, then it's going to be horror, right? So I was really excited by that. And so it's basically about this girl in her teens trying to kind of understand herself, and she's kind of becoming very reclusive. Yeah, when you're young and you're just trying to figure things out and you're scared of being seen in a certain way, and like her best friend is like, come on, let's go to this party, it's gonna be so fun, and she's like, oh no, but I don't know what I'm gonna wear. Like, it's really like that. But then all these strange things start to happen to her, and she then has to face herself quite literally. And it's like a psychological horror, and there's this whole thing about birds in it. So me and Sina were trying to figure out a way to kind of give this kind of weird being a voice, and that was through this kind of bird creature thing. So throughout the soundtrack, you'll hear the nightingale and also me screaming like a bird. So there's a little bit of that where you can't tell which is the bird and which is this kind of like me being this bird.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's kind of throughout. And then at the end of that project, I made a song for the credits. We didn't end up using it for the credits, but I still wanted to release it. So that's called Wide-Eyed Bird Sings. And it's one of my favorite things I've made in a while. So
yes, I love that track too. It's really, really splendid.
oh, thank you so much.
On that note, we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. Good news! Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known by fans as BPAL, has been growing by leaps and bounds since the indie perfumer's relocation to Philadelphia in 2022. The lab's general catalog of perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, and beard oils continues to expand month by month, exploring a wide range of scent types and inspirations such as witchcraft, paganism, fine art, and classic role-playing games. For their Halloween 2024 collection, BPAL has adapted Sheridan Le Fanu's gothic horror masterpiece Carmilla into a prolific series of 21 perfume and hair gloss blends. This limited edition series also includes some Halloween-y beard oils, such as pumpkin spice and type AB negative, plus a wealth of other delights for those who love to summon the fall spirit year-round. Look for the lab's Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for fresh updates, artistic inspiration, scent reviews, and more. Or you can dive in directly via their online shop located at blackphoenixalchemylab.com.
You've heard me wax ecstatic about Snowy Owl Tea before, and so you will understand why I am so excited to announce that I have teamed up with them to create an exclusive Witch Wave herbal tea blend just for you. Witch Wave tea combines some of my favorite botanicals, including nettles, rosehip, lavender, elderflower, and vanilla. And there's also some butterfly pea flower in there, which means that if you squeeze some lemon into your tea after it's brewed, the color will change, just like magic. And of course, it comes in Snowy Owl's signature shiny holographic packaging with a brand new Black Cat and Purple Moon label, all of which makes me swoon. This Witch Wave tea blend from me and Snowy Owl is now available in the Witch Wave shop while supplies last. So head on over to witchwavepodcast.com/shop to order yours now. It's currently the only place where you can buy this tea blend. But don't forget to also check out Snowy Owl Tea's other delicious tea blends over on their website, snowyowltea.com, and you'll see why I fell in love with their handcrafted, scrumptious, full-leaf tea and blossom blends in the first place. Some of my favorites of theirs include Second Breakfast, which is a blend of lemon, poppy seed, and oat, and 11th Hour Black Tea, which has vanilla and cardamom. And best of all, Snowy Owl is offering 10% off any teas ordered from their site using code POTION. So head over to snowyowltea.com and use code POTION for 10% off their house blends. And if you want our new, exclusive, delicious, color-changing Witch Wave herbal tea blend, you can order that now over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop.
Welcome back to the Witch Wave. Today I'm speaking with Damsel Elysium. So Damsel, you were talking earlier about collaboration, and one of the other people I was so excited to meet at House of Hackney is your dear friend. I would call her your maybe mutual muse. I feel like you are also her muse. This, of course, is the artist Polina Osipova. And for those listening, you may already follow Paulina on Instagram, but if you don't, go check out Paulina's work. Maybe you could actually describe it for us and then share how you started working together and inspiring each other.
Yeah, I mean, me and Paulina have known each other since maybe like 3 years now, but we knew of each other's work on Instagram for quite a while. I was like a huge fan of Paulina's work. I was like, oh my God, so cool. And then Paulina discovered me through this Simone Rocha campaign. And then we just instantly connected. We're like, oh my God. And the first time we met, so Paulina's from Russia and she is from this area of Russia called Chorvashia. So it's like a Turkic ethnic background. And she had her first London exhibition in, I think it was also Hackney. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go to this. And I was expecting like I'd meet her and it would be amazing. But she wasn't there because her visa wasn't sorted.
No.
So my first interaction with her was like over an iPad. So like they had done the opening and she was just there on a screen like, hello guys.
Oh.
Yeah. And then a few days later, her visa then got accepted and she flew over. And her English, she was still learning.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this moment where we literally couldn't talk to each other. We were just kind of staring at each other quite happily. But I love that because then later on, she'd come back to London. She stayed with me for 2 weeks. And it was this really interesting thing where we would interact about things that we liked or about our families through pictures and through showing things. And this kind of very telepathic way of communicating. And it was amazing because we would just have to use eye contact and images and some words that we did know between us and stuff.
Yes.
And that was like grounding for both of us. I think that just kind of solidified everything. Small talk just didn't work,
Yeah.
So we kind of skipped that and we got very deep. And for listeners who don't know, so Paulina is like a wearable sculpture artist.
Yes.
And she makes all these like mechanical kind of moving parts and things to do with the heart, things to do with her family back in Slovakia, using images, embroidery, textile, kind of engineering all these amazing worlds.
Yes. I think when people hear the word kinetic or, these technical words, they might think it's very mechanical. But actually, in my experience of her, it's very fantastical and soft. And it's almost like she makes herself into like a human Wunderkammer or something like that. Like it's just so opulent.
Yeah. And I resonated with that world so much. And I think same with Paulina. Our worlds are very different, but also exist in the same universe, kind of. And other than like, I think that artistic link, we're also just extremely close friends. Like,
yes,
we bonded very well, and she's my best friend,
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I read that interview with the two of you. I think it was in Violet recently. And I am such a big proponent of platonic romance. I'm married to a man. I love him, but I have such a deep romance with my friends, and many of whom are women or non-binary. And there's nothing quite like it. And it feels like the two of you are in this artistic, platonic romance.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I sometimes say, oh, you're my wife. Like, even though we're both in relationships, but we do love each other. We say that. And I believe in that kind of love. I think love is something that is a universal thing. It's a universal feeling. But where you place it and who you place it in is, it takes different forms.
Yes.
And with Paulina, I think we just adore each other, and we're just so supportive of each other as well in any way that we can be.
Yes, it feels like you're mutual muses for each other too.
Yeah.
We haven't talked yet about a lot of the visual aspects to your work. Certainly, you're a visual artist as well. I know you have a show up right now in London that will be up through the 27th of November. But in addition to that, you also have the most gorgeous sense of fashion and style and costume, pageantry. I mean, this is one of the reasons I love your work so much, and I love Paulina's work so much, is to use that word world building again. It's like you're really giving us this whole fantasy when you perform. And so what is it about costume or garments that feels like it's enhancing how you want to express yourself?
I think clothes are very sacred. And I think the way that we interact with fabric and clothes now is just completely unsustainable. And for me, like, I grew up with a mum who was very fashionable. So I definitely just soaked all of that up. But something about her is she is adamant about the type of fabric that you wear. So silk, cotton, wool, these kind of very natural things.
Natural, yes.
The feeling of fabric is really important to her. She used to even get a cloth and be like, oh, is this wool? And she'd put it directly to her nose to smell, because she would be able to tell if something was leather or wool by smelling it. And that way of interacting with material feels so visceral and right. And it carries into fashion. So for me, clothing, it isn't so much about costume. I wouldn't say it's about dressing up and becoming something else. It's more about the clothes giving you a certain power, right?
Yes. Talismanic.
Yeah. So silk gives me warmth. Wool gives me warmth. That's kind of energy, right? And then when you mix it with styling and things that you like shape and color, this is very important to me. And I think for me, I started as a model, and then through modeling, you kind of interact more with fashion. That element, you learn more about like shapes and cuts. My mum was a fashion designer, so I already knew some of this. But that world is very important to me because it's another way of communicating without using words. It's another way of taking up space. So for me, taking up space is very important to my practice. Through reclamation, through revolutionary practices, taking up space is really important. And I'm a very quiet person, actually, unless I'm talking about something I really enjoy. But usually I'm quite quiet and reserved. And a way for me to show that I'm present is through clothing. So yeah, similar to what I was saying about wearing white in performances as a way to kind of reflect energy, there's also that practice with other ways of wearing clothes, whether it's the style, whether it's the color, whether it's the type of fabric. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Absolutely. It absolutely did. We're coming up on time, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about playing with FKA Twigs because I am just such a big fan of hers. What was that experience like for you?
I mean, Twigs is one of those artists that I have loved for a very long time, and is one of those people that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without her. And I mean that as in she's someone who's just so formidable. Also a Capricorn. We're both Capricorns. But that kind of just that drive of whatever that creative vision is, to do it to its full capacity, no compromise. And her world building is another level.
Ugh, exquisite.
I can't lie, I was so nervous when I was asked to be part of it. The first time that I worked with Twigs was for this kind of like private party, and I just remember turning up to the rehearsal room like, oh my God, I'm gonna mess up. Oh my God. I was so nervous.
Understandable.
But Twigs is just so on it. It was very inspiring for me because it showed me that the way that I create is very similar, like listening to the sound of something and really giving it the time to know if you like it and how to change it and morph it and try new things, but also being focused and honest to what you do and don't like. She's very like, we do it like this. And I
Yes.
really love that. Like, that's very important to me, especially as a Black person as well. Again, taking up space in the right way. I loved that experience. I learned a lot.
Yes. Well, the video online is really lovely to watch. I highly, highly recommend it. It's just beautiful. I want to end, well, I don't want to end. I want to just make sure we talk about your current project. This is called Soft Falling. This is both the name of your, is it an art and sound exhibition that's up now in London?
Yeah, so Soft Falling is going to be an eventual first album.
Yes.
But it's also a very, very complex conceptual and visual world as well that I'm working on now. So rather than having like a typical release where it's like, okay, here's the songs and here's the music videos, it's like, no, we start now before the release of this world building that people can interact with and discover later on that there's more to the world. And it's kind of ironic because my first EP was actually about grounding and coming back to nature, but this project is about dissociation and feeling out of body, but using it as a practice, as a point of creation. So there's a lot about falling and levitating. And I'm also using a lot of my dreams now to create work. I had a dream about a hurdy-gurdy on the ceiling once, which was really funny, but I remember the dream being really, really visceral. So I had to make it in life. So that's on at the exhibition. It's like an interactive mechanism where you open a door and it pulls some string, and it's a bit like a booby trap, but it pulls some string and then there's bow hair at the end of the string and then this kind of giant hurdy-gurdy on this ceiling beam.
Wow.
yeah, I'm trying to basically test things out and also test these performance practices that I spoke about earlier to get to the eventual point of soft falling.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the idea of you using the gallery, and we should just say this is at Stage Gallery in London. I love the idea of you using the gallery as this active alchemical laboratory where you're working things out, which will eventually also become your LP. That's really exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I'm treating it not just as like a kind of physical room, something that's seen from a room, but also like a embodied thing. So eventually I'm going to do a workshop where I experience what sound is like or what certain states are like falling or playing on the floor or singing while jumping, like what kind of like sounds and interactions that bubble up from those states. So it's very like kind of Pope L inspired, this kind of anti-vertical world. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds just so intriguing to me. I wish I was still in London so I could go see that. But for those who can be in London, once again, this show is up through November 27th. The workshop is on November 25th. I think I have that right. And let me just close by saying, you are an artist that I am so excited by. I'm so inspired by. I was an immediate fan of yours. And so anything you do next, I'm there. I just can't wait, whether it's in the physical world or the digital world. I will be there for it. And I really hope we can get you to come to New York so I can see you in person.
Oh, I'd love that. And thank you so much. This was so great to have a conversation with you as well. Like, it's amazing. When we first met as well, I was like, oh my God, Unreal Witch. Like, obviously, like, it's not something that I'd say I'm very online. So I don't really get to meet people in person who I resonate with, you know? So it was really lovely meeting you. And like, I'm very excited to kind of continue this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't shake me now. And let's definitely keep the conversation unfurling. Thank you so much, Damsel Elysium, and many, many blessings and magic to you on your show and to be continued.
Thank you so much.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Damsel Elysium for sharing their vibrant, vibrating vessel with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmophile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and/or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witch Wave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website, and now buy Witch Wave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witch Wave or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witch Wave.